What's up, guys? This is Tyler's take on spring turkey hunting. It is May 15th here in Pennsylvania, and spring turkey season is underway. About halfway through the season here, and I got to tell you, it has been a complete washout for the last 2 weeks. Yeah, there's been a couple days that have been decent along the way, but for the most part, it has poured almost every morning here. So maybe you haven't had a chance to get out yet or only had a couple opportunities. I wanted to put this video out, though, to kind of cover some basic turkey hunting strategies and techniques. We'll call it Turkey Hunting 101, if you will. We'll talk about some different types of turkey behavior. We'll talk about essential gear that you might want to bring with you while you're going out. Some basic scouting and different setups you can use. Some different turkey calls that you can bring with you and how to use them. And then it's just some overall safety concerns that you might want to keep in mind. So if that sounds like something you're into, let's get started. All right, so first up, we want to discuss some different types of turkey behavior. How turkeys act, some things to look for, and that might make you more successful. So the biggest thing that I hear guys talk about, or I won't say it's a mistake, but I actually was just talking to a friend recently who kind of brought this up. Said, "Oh man, on my cameras a few months ago, I had tons and tons and tons of turkeys on my camera. They were on my property, marching through. 30, 40 of them at a time." I hear that all the time, and it's exciting because you get done with deer season in the fall, and there's not really a whole lot going on in the wintertime, and then you start to see these big flocks of turkeys show up. You're like, oh man, it starts to get you excited for spring, starts to get excited for April or May or whenever your turkey season starts up. Problem is, when you see these giant flocks of turkeys in the winter, that is most certainly not where they're going to be in the spring. Throughout the late winter, early spring, you hear about a pecking order. Well, turkeys start to establish a pecking order, and these big flocks start to break up, and then you have them break up, and now that big flock of 30, 40, 50, 60 turkeys are now scattered all throughout the area. So keep in mind, where you see them in the winter is not necessarily where they're going to be in the spring. Now, next, when it comes to looking for turkeys, the epitome of spring turkey season is seeing a big tom that's puffed up, his tail feathers are up, and he's strutting back and forth. Now, keep in mind, in the spring turkey season or the spring turkey woods or hunting spring turkeys, a male turkey, a tom or a gobbler, he is going to strut to try to attract hens or females. So he's going to puff himself up really, really big. He's going to put his tail feathers up, try to make himself look big and pretty, and he's going to strut back and forth and try to attract a hen to come to him. So that's what happens in the natural turkey woods. The problem is, when we're trying to hunt them, we're trying to reverse nature, because what are we trying to do? We're trying to sound like a hen to get a gobbler to come to us. So we're trying to reverse nature, and it's important to keep that in mind, because guys get frustrated because they're like, oh man, these gobblers were coming in and they just got hung up. What'll happen is, picture this. So you get out into the woods, you put your back up against a tree, and you start to call to a gobbler. You start to yelp, and you hear a gobbler respond, and then you yelp again, and he gobbles, and you yelp, and he gobbles, and you hear him start to come in. You start to get excited. But then he gets to a certain point and he never comes any closer. What do you think happened? Probably what happened was that gobbler or that tom got to a point in the woods or in a field where he thought he was visible, and he thought he was close enough for that hen to see him, and he started strutting back and forth. And what he's doing is he's trying to get that hen to notice him, to come to him. And we're frustrated because we want him to come to us. So that's where, turkeys will get hung up, and that closing that last 50 to 100 yards is the most frustrating part of turkey season. I think that's why turkey season is fun, because it's not easy and it's vocal, it's back and forth, it's interactive, but it can be extremely frustrating for that reason. So keep that in mind. We're trying to reverse nature, so you're trying to get them to do something that they're not normally used to doing. Now, next up, I want to talk about some essential gear that you can bring with you into the turkey woods. Now, if you go to any Bass Pro Shops or Cabela's or Dick's Sporting Goods or whatever your local sporting goods store of choice is, if you go into the turkey section you're going to see these big turkey vests that are full of 100 different pockets. They're full of pockets to put different calls and everything else in. And I see guys that will load up these turkey vests with every call under the woods because they want to be prepared for everything, or they want to be prepared for anything. They say, well, you never know what that turkey's looking for that day, so I like to be prepared. Well, now you've got box calls that make tons of noise out while you're walking. You got 4 different pot calls. You've got maybe 12 different diaphragm calls or mouth calls. You've got a push button call. You've got crow locator calls, owl locator calls. And now you're weighted down, you're making all kinds of noise, your turkey vest is flinging. Like, who wants to move with all that stuff on them? And maybe you got 3, decoys in the pouch behind you or a bag. I have found to be most effective, or I have found when I am most effective is when I can cover the most amount of ground comfortably and quickly. And for me, less is more. The less I bring with me into the woods, the more ground I'm able to cover and the more effective I'm able to be. So less is more when it comes to gear. We'll talk about this again in a minute, but as far as calls go, I like to bring 2, maybe 3 calls with me into the woods. My typical loadout is going to be either a box call and a mouth call or a pot call and a mouth call. That's it. 1 pot call, 1 mouth call, and I'm gone. If you're going really early in the morning, I might bring an owl call as a locator. That's super lightweight. You can throw that in your pocket, but that's all I bring with me into the woods. Nothing else. That, my gun, and I'm gone. I can cover tons of ground. I don't have to worry about carrying all kinds of stuff. And when I do finally get a turkey to gobble, I'm not thinking about what call am I going to use. I just grab the one that I'm good at and I start calling. I think it's a lot more effective for you to get really good at using one type of call, and then that's the one you go with. So for me, less is more. We'll get more into calls here in a minute, but when it comes to what to wear, I think that's extremely important. So we'll kind of start from the bottom up. Starting from your feet, I think the most important technical piece of gear you can wear in the woods is a waterproof shoe or waterproof boot. It's springtime, and dew is going to be heavy on the ground in the morning, and it's probably going to be wet because it's probably been raining. It's currently raining, or it rained the night before or the day before. The ground is going to be wet, and when I'm turkey hunting, at least, I'm moving through a lot of grass, sometimes tall grass, and I'm going to get soaked. And call me what you want, but I don't like to have wet feet, especially when I'm walking all over the place. I might cover miles and miles and miles that morning, and I don't like to do it with wet feet. So a waterproof boot or shoe. And then for pants, I also like to have, doesn't have to be waterproof, but some type of water resistant pant. For me, I like a durable water resistant pant. Durable because I'm probably going to be walking through grass or some type of brush. And I don't want it to rip and get snagged up on thorns or whatever. And then water resistant because, of what we just talked about with boots. I want it to be able to repel some type of, water or dew so that I'm not walking around with wet pants. Also, I'm going to be sitting on the ground. So some type of water resistant pant. Now, another thing I'll talk about, it's not really a piece of clothing, but a foam seat, a foam pad to take as a seat. I a lot of times don't bring this because it's something that just flops around and look, I can suck it up and sit in the ground for 30 minutes or even an hour if I really have to. Is my butt gonna fall asleep? Maybe, yeah, maybe, but whatever. But if I'm not going that far, or if I'm really just wanting to be comfortable at the time, you can get yourself one of those little foam seat cushions. Bring that with you. A lot of times is usually a piece of Velcro. I'll put that on my belt or just drape it over the barrel of my gun and then carry that with me out into the woods. And then if I'm, when it comes time to set up, I can use that foam cushion, and it makes makes your setup a lot more comfortable. So back to clothing though. Up top, I like to, when I'm dressing for the weather, always I preach dressing in layers. So I personally use Sitka gear, I know, but I bought Sitka gear for elk hunting. I have their subalpine pattern. It's the greens and browns. It does really, really well in the turkey woods. So that's what I wear. I wear their core lightweight, close to my skin, and then I have a hoodie of theirs as well. I'll layer on top with. And that's really all I'll need. And then as the day progresses, if it gets warm, I can take the hoodie off. Sometimes if it's really cool, if it's in the 30s or low 40s, I can put a jacket on over top of that and then shed that. But it's springtime, so depending on where you are, it's probably going to be, it could be 35, 40 degrees in the morning, and then it could be 70, 75 degrees by noon. So having that ability to shed some layers, I think, is going to be important. And then hat and gloves. So I talked about pattern that I wear. It doesn't matter what pattern you use, but you need to wear some type of camouflage pattern. It is extremely important for whatever you're wearing to blend in with your surroundings and your environment. Turkey, if you don't know, turkey have some of the best eyesight in the entire animal kingdom. They can see in color. They can see, I think it's like something like 270 degrees. I always say turkeys are the dumbest animal that I hunt, but they're extremely good at staying alive. So I don't think that they're incredibly smart, but they are very good at staying alive. And a lot of that has to do with their eyesight. They're extremely good at finding stuff that doesn't fit or detecting movement. If you're in the woods wearing a hoodie and blue jeans, you're going to stick out like a sore thumb, and they're going to pick up on that. So dressing in full head to toe camo when it comes to hunting turkeys, I think is essential. It's a non-negotiable. So camouflage hat, camouflage mask, if you have it, camouflage top, pants, and even camouflage gloves. That is a non-negotiable. I will not go into the woods without all of that. I think it's extremely important if you want to be successful. Because look, you're hunting with a shotgun or a bow, you're looking to have that turkey come to within 20, 30, 40 yards at max. That's close. And now you're trying to make it so he doesn't pick up on any kind of movement. Well, you're going to have to use, and you're at his eye level. You're not in a tree stand like you're in the deer woods. You're at his eye level on the ground. So camouflage is extremely important. But that's all I have for clothing. So the next thing I want to talk about is some basic scouting and setups. Now, I'm not going to make a whole segment on scouting. Maybe that'll be another video. We'll talk just about turkey scouting. But when I mean scouting, I'm really talking about identifying where you're going to set up to try to kill these turkeys, or identify where these turkeys are going to be. So we talked earlier that turkeys or gobblers are going to strut, right? The way they do, they gobble to try to get hens. They'll hear a hen yelp, they'll gobble, they get their attention, and they find a location where they think the hen can see them, and they strut back and forth and back and forth. Let's be honest, as turkey hunters, 90% of us, probably 95% of us are hunting gobbles, right? We don't have their movement, their zones, dialed in that much where we know exactly where they're going to fly down and what route they're going to take to go feed. 95% of us are going out in the woods, we're listening for gobbles, and that's the bird we're going to hunt based on that. So when does a turkey gobble the most? Well, they do it on the roost, when they fly down, when they fly up to the roost, and then primarily in their strut zones. So in where they're going to strut back and forth. So where are those strut zones going to be? That's where we want to hunt. Well, they're going to be in areas that they think hens can see them. So they're open areas, not those really, really thick areas of brush. They're not going to strut there. They're not going to gobble there because that's not where they think hens can see them. So you're looking for field edges or even open fields. In the middle of an open field all the time, I see turkeys. Or if you're going to be in the woods, you're looking for hardwood areas that don't have a lot of underbrush. Anywhere, again, where they think a hen can see them. So that's really where you're looking for those strut zones. And you can look for things like turkey tracks and turkey feathers and droppings to try to really dial in where they're going to be. For me, a surefire way to identify where a gobbler is going to be is honestly, maybe this is the lazy way out, but go out the night before. Go out about an hour before sunset and just listen. Go into an area of woods where there's turkeys somewhere, but you don't know exactly where. listen. About an hour before sunset, they're going to start to make noise. 30 minutes prior, 15 minutes prior, they're really going to start to make some noise. They're going to start to gobble, or cluck or putt, or make these different turkey noises, and then eventually they're going to fly up to the roost. And when they fly up to the roost, it's going to sound like a tornado peeling through the woods. You're going to be able to hear that if you're close enough. And then once they get to the roost, they almost can't help themselves. They're going to let out a few gobbles once they're up there, and those are the ones you're listening for. So now you can hear those gobbles, identify even a general area of where they are. Keep that in mind, pin it on your map, and then that's where you want to come back to the next morning. So that's what's called putting a turkey to bed, or putting a gobbler to bed. You come back the next morning before sunrise and get yourself set up within 100, 200 yards of that location. Find a good tree to set up in. Right at sunrise, or just before sunrise, make a few little yelps. You can even do a fly down sequence. I have a buddy of mine, he swears by using his hat. So at sunrise, when turkeys are starting to fly down, really the woods are starting to come alive, you make some yelps, some soft yelps, and then you do a fly down. So take off your hat and then hit it up against your leg, up and down. And it'll sound like turkeys flying down. And then once you do that, put your hat back on, make a couple more yelps, and it sounds like, now you sound like a hen that has just flown down. Man, if you can do that right, and you're close enough to a gobbler that's on the roost, when he flies down, he is going to fly to your location. And if he's not, well, hey, that's not a killable bird, so no harm, no foul. That to me is the ultimate turkey setup, and where you're going to be most successful. Outside of that, when it comes to turkey setups, again, I'm simple. I'm looking for an area, I hear a gobble, and I'm looking for then a tree that I can put my back up against. What I'm looking for is a tree that's wider than me, all right? So wider than my shoulders, that I can set up against, so I can make some small movements inside of that tree, and I'm not sticking out like a sore thumb, all right? Pretend that I'm the tree, and if I'm all in camouflage pattern and I'm doing this, you can't really see it so much. But the second I'm outside of myself, well, now this is visible. So finding that tree that's wider than you is going to be the most important. Obviously, don't set yourself up right in the middle of anywhere, unless you have some type of camouflage or some type of cover to be in. Again, I say turkeys are dumb. A deer, you set up a ground blind in the middle of the woods. If that wasn't there the day before, a deer's going to come in, see that, and they're gone, unless it's a really young doe or something. They are able to identify, hey, that wasn't here before. I'm not messing around with that. Turkeys, you could be in the middle of a field, and you set up a ground blind in there. You set up, as long as you're not moving, he'll pretend like that ground blind doesn't exist. He'll come right up to it. He might even peck it for a little bit. So movement is key. They're looking for that movement. Stay still, and you're going to be okay. Be in some type of camouflage and stay still, and you're going to stand a really good chance. And that to me is the best setup to be in. Really quick, when it comes to decoys, personally, less is more. I don't use decoys 90% of the time. If I'm going to use a decoy, if I'm going to be in an area that's really open, maybe I'm going to have a turkey that I'm going to need to cross, a gobbler that I'm going to need to cross really open hardwoods, or a big open field. Think of it this way. A gobbler is going to hear a turkey yelp. All right. And if they can see where they think that yelp is coming from, but they don't see a turkey there, they don't see a hen over there, like now they might be like, what's going on here? That, what I'm hearing isn't matching what I'm seeing. So what I'll do in those situations is I'll typically bring a single hen decoy. Put a single hen decoy about 30 yards, 20 yards, 40 yards at most, whatever, away from me. That way, when I'm calling, if a gobbler looks at where the call is coming from, he can see a hen. Okay, makes sense. Eyes match the ears, and then he'll come in. But for the most part, I hunt mostly wooded areas. And I try to make my setups in an area where I can set up, I can call, and then as soon as that tom or that gobbler is visible, I'm in position to make a shot or take a shot. So for that reason, I don't use decoys. Another decoy setup you can use that I think is really effective, or can be really effective, especially for this time of year, maybe second week in, is going to be a single hen with a single Jake decoy. And I say Jake because they're non-threatening. If you get a younger tom that's coming in, he might see, if you have a big, full strut tom decoy, he might see that and get a little intimidated and not want to close the distance because he doesn't want to get whooped up on. He doesn't, not looking for a fight. So a Jake decoy is non-threatening, low threat. He might say, I could take him, and he might want to commit and come in anyways. And he might even be like, hey, I'm not going to let that Jake get my hen. So that can kind of really entice a tom to come in, but for me, it's just going to be a single hen. If you want to learn about these big setups with strutters and there's tons of videos out there to using those types of setups. It's just not what I use. All right, so now the best part here, the most interesting part or interactive part when it comes to turkey hunting is calling. So what calls should you bring into the woods with you wherever it is you're going? So first off, what are some different calls? So first up, we have the box call. So this is probably, I think, what you see the most used. It's a box call. There's a lid, there's a box, usually wooden, and it's a friction call. The sound is produced from the lid scraping up against the box here. All right, and a basic yelp is going to sound something just like this. All right, so that's your basic box call. Super simple, super easy to use. If you're just learning how to use or how to make turkey sounds or use turkey calls, I recommend picking up a box call. Not a big learning curve, easy to use. It can get extremely loud. I'm going to carry a box call with me if it's a loud day. If it's loud, windy, maybe there's lots of road noise, this is going to be my go-to. I can make a lot of different noises with it, and it's just easy and it just works. So that's a box call. Next up, we have a pot call. Now there's all kinds of different pot calls, but a pot call is just this. There's some type of surface that you're going to scrape with a striker. All right, so you have a striker, could be made out of different materials. There's also pot calls that can be made out of different materials. This is made out of slate. You have slate calls, you have glass calls, crystal calls, aluminum calls. I'm sure I'm missing some. They're all going to make the same sounds, but they're going to sound a little bit different. They're going to produce slightly different pitches and tones. Slate calls are great for, producing those really intricate, soft and subtle tones that maybe you want to use if you're in close. But they're all used essentially the same way. So a basic yelp on a slate. All right, so that is a basic slate call. This year so far, all the times that I've gone out, I've just gone out with a pot call and a mouth call, and that's it. So this is typically my go-to. I use a glass call, which I'll show you here. Again, not a huge difference, but a glass call, typically the advantages of a glass call has a glass surface is it's going to be louder. It produces a different tone and a slightly different sound. But for me, I'm going to be able to throw sound a lot farther with a glass call than I am with a slate. So again, if it's a windy day or loud in the woods, a glass call is going to be my go-to. This, honestly, is what I bring into the woods 90% of the time. Well, I won't say 90, we'll say 70% of the time is going to be this right here. This one in particular is actually glass on the front, and then on the back, it has a small slate. So I can use the glass call to really, really make a loud yelp. And then when the turkeys come in close, I can use the slate on the back to make a different, slightly more intricate, softer sound. But the glass call, just like that, not a whole lot of difference, but it's going to be louder for me. And look, I am by no means a calling expert, so you can watch a bunch of different videos and read a bunch of different articles if you want to become an expert on calling, which I am not. And they're going to tell you all the little differences, but this is kind of broad stroke stuff. The next one. All right, so this is a push button call. This is a push button call from HS. It's called the HS Strut. All right, the Hunter Specialties. If you've got kids that you're taking out, or maybe you're just learning how to turkey hunt and you don't really know how to use calls yet, the easiest call to use is going to be this guy right here. It's another friction call. It's going to create sound by the friction created with the wood. All you do, this button right here on top, you push that button and boom, you've got a turkey yelp. You can do you can make little cuts. But this thing, man, look, at the end of the day, turkeys will gobble at anything. My free locator call that I use is my car door when I get out of the truck in the morning. I get out of the truck, I slam my truck door, and I listen. And if there's gobblers close, they're going to gobble at that. That's a bird that I can kill. I'm looking for a bird that I can kill. I'm not the world's greatest turkey hunter, and I'll never claim to be. I'm looking for a tom that I can kill. If you are a world-class turkey caller, you can probably kill any bird in the woods. Doesn't matter if he's ready or not. You're going to be able to entice him to come to you. That's not me. And if that's not you, then get good at anything. Just be able to make some kind of sound. Your yelp is going to be the easiest sound to produce. It's going to probably a yelp has killed more toms than any other call in the woods. And if you spend enough time in the woods and listen to hens make noises, listen to them yelp, listen to them cut and purr and cluck, you're going to hear that they make all different sounds. They all sound different. So just because your yelp doesn't sound like the next guy's yelp, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean you're wrong. If it sounds like it could be a hen, hey, listen, if you have a killable tom and he hears something that sounds like a yelp and he's committed, he's ready, he's going to gobble and he's coming. I promise you that. So being able to make some sound is more important, I think, than being able to make the perfect sound. That guy right there is going to be able to allow you to kill a turkey, I promise. The final is a diaphragm or a mouth call. Now, this is something that I always have with me. It takes up no space. It's not heavy. I'm not banging around in my pocket. And this is going to be something, look, I'm not again, world-class caller. I'm not very good with a mouth call, but I can make a sound with it. This is going to be something that I'm going to use. So say I'm set up and my back is up against a tree. I have a tom that's coming in. I can see him. He can see me. I've got my gun up and I cannot afford to move my hands to use a box call or to use a pot call. That's when this guy's going to come into play. I'm going to have this in my mouth, and I'm going to be able to make a sound with it. So if he starts to get hung up and if he starts to walk the other way, I can entice him to come a little bit closer. But this is going to be something, it's produced by, the sound's produced, it has different, every mouth call is the same. It has different layers of latex. And those layers of latex, when you blow air out of your mouth, it passes over those layers of latex, they vibrate together, and it produces a sound. So put it in your mouth like this. And that's going to be your basic yelp you're going to use or produce with a mouth call. Again, not the world's best turkey caller, but I'm dangerous enough to get a turkey to respond, and that's what we're looking for. For me, man, turkey hunting is... I like deer hunting more than turkey hunting. I'm more passionate about deer hunting, but man, is turkey hunting fun. And it's fun because it's interactive. I get to cover lots of ground. I get to call, they respond. It's a back and forth. So being able to make that communication is key. So that's all I wouldn't say that's all. There's some other odd calls out there, but those are the calls that I have, your basic turkey calls that are going to produce hen sounds. You also have different locator calls. Now, a locator call is going to be used to locate a tom. It's a call that you're going to use to make him gobble. Okay, that's what it is. So in the morning, if you are getting into the woods and it's dark, or maybe the sky's just starting to turn blue, and you hear the woods start to kind of come alive, you're going to hear owl calls. And to make a turkey gobble, you're trying to startle him. That's it. That's all you're trying to do. You're trying to startle him. He'll gobble when he's startled, or he'll gobble if he hears a hen. A locator call is going to allow you to get that turkey to gobble, to know where he is, without sounding like a hen, because maybe you're not in a setup, place to set up yet. Maybe you're not ready. You just want to figure out where they're at. Once you figure out where they're at, you can get set up. Then you sound like a hen and get them to come to you. So in the morning, again, the sky's just starting to turn blue. Use an owl call, and that is going to make them give themselves up. All right. So an owl call is just something like this. This is a basic one from Primos. It's called the hoot flute. All right. There's tons of owl calls out there, but all right, something just like that. You do that in the morning 1 or 2 times, and then listen. If you're in an area where there's turkeys within 100, 200 yards where they can hear that, chances are they're going to gobble. You're going to be able to figure out, okay, they're in this tree or in that location, and allow you to get set up. So that's what I'm going to use only until sunrise. Once the sun comes up, the owls are going to shut up, and that's not going to be as effective anymore. And it's going to kind of start to throw up some alarms. Because it's not what they're used to hearing in the woods. When the sun's up, maybe it's 7, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, the woods have come alive. That's when you're going to use your crow call. Again, you're just trying to startle them. So a crow call is just sounding like a crow. All right. That's all it is. You're trying to, whoa, what was that? They let out a big gobble. And now you're able to determine where they are, and then you can get yourself set up. Once you get yourself set up, then use those yelps and then get them to come to your location. All right. So real quick, I want to give some examples of different calls you can use. Now, we talked about the yelp. Let's see if this works right. The plain yelp is going to sound, I did some examples of it here, but it's going to sound just like this here. All right, so that is an actual turkey or an actual hen making a yelp. Again, that if you can learn that, you can kill a turkey. All right, but there are some other calls I think may be important to know just in case. All right, so one of them, let's go through here. One of them is going to be a cluck. So a cluck is going to be short spurts, like short staccato notes here. A yelp is going to be more of a long drawn out, but a cluck is going to be, one or more just short little notes that they're going to use. A lot of times you'll hear them cluck in conjunction with a purr, which we'll talk about here in a second. But this is what a cluck might sound like. All right, so now this could be something, if really you get a tom or a gobbler that's hung up, this could be a good call that you could use to get him to really to close that distance. Maybe you don't want to use a full yelp, but this could be something he's going back and forth. Maybe he's feeding, he's feeling calm, or he's feeling relaxed, and she's feeling relaxed, and she's making these little cuts and little purrs. A purr is going to be just kind of sounds like a purr, like a kitten or a cat would purr, but they'll make that. A lot of times they'll make that when there's multiple hens together and they're looking for insects on the ground and they're eating. They do these little purrs and these little clucks, and a tom hears that and they think, hey man, there's some girls over there. Let me go check it out. So this is a combination of some clucks and purrs. You hear that purr. So that's obviously more than one turkey making those noises, but those are clucks and purrs. The next one is going to be a cut. So a cut is going to be kind of like a cluck here. There's your gobble at the end there. One more time. All right, so the cut is the excited hen. That hen's feeling it. She heard a gobble. He's gobbling, she's yelping, and now she's super excited, so she starts to cut. And she might cut and yelp at the same time. So if I'm using this glass call, so it might sound like, right? You might use those cuts and the yelps together. Now that it sounds like the hen's excited, and that might make the tom excited. And now he's like, I can't take it anymore. I'm coming. All right. So that's the cut. Now, I talked about fly down yelps. If you're trying to do yelps first thing in the morning, or maybe you're trying to imitate a hen on the roost or a hen that just flew down, that they're not going to be typically cutting and being all excited. That's going to be where you want to kind of slow it down, soft, slow yelps. Think about, you're tired, you just woke up. Try to make it sound natural. And that's it. So that's calling in a nutshell. The last thing I want to talk about, guys, is going to be just some basic hunter safety. So turkey hunting is fun. I said, because I'm a run and gun turkey hunter. I like to cover ground. I like to call. I like to be interactive. If you're hunting public land or even private land where there's not just you hunting on that land, turkey hunting can be dangerous. All right. Picture this. I said before, 90% of us, I'm going to catch some flack for that, are hunting gobbles. So the last call I didn't talk about is the gobbler, is a gobble call. And gobbles will make other toms gobble. So if you use a gobble call, you gobble, other toms are going to gobble. But picture this now, you're in the middle of the woods, you're trying to get these toms to get fired up. You use a gobbler. Well, what do you think is going to happen? Every other hunter in audible distance is going to hear that gobble, and now they're coming to your location. So you do that gobble, you hear another tom gobble, you're like, oh, okay, he's coming. And then you get yourself set up. You take your decoys, you set them out about 20 yards away from you. You put your back up against a tree. Now you got all these other hunters coming to you. You get a hunter that's not as safe as you are, has got an itchy trigger finger. All right, he just heard a gobble. He's going through the woods. He heard a gobble. He sees a hen. Maybe you got your Jake decoy out. He sees the Jake. He's excited. He pulls his gun up and he fires and doesn't see you sitting right behind your Jake decoy. And now you just have a bad situation. So be safe. That's why I don't use a gobble call in the woods. But that's also sometimes some of the reasons I don't use decoys. You get all kinds of guys that are out in the woods, and you just need to be careful. If guys aren't being safe, they might see the decoy. They might want to shoot the decoy. I don't know why, but it happens, and you hear about it all the time. So be safe. It might mean you want to wear like an orange hat or some kind of orange to let other hunters know that that's you, because maybe your camouflage is too good and they can't see you. Keep that in mind. Always pay attention to what is beyond your target. That is hunter safety. That's firearm safety 101. Always know what's beyond your target. Before you pull the gun up and before you pull that trigger on a turkey, you need to know what's behind the turkey and to make sure it's not a fellow hunter and you're not putting someone in danger. So with that, guys, that's all I've got. In closing, we talked about some different turkey behavior. We talked about essential gear to bring with you, talked about some basic scouting tips and setups, and then we talked about calls. So hopefully you've learned something. Again, this is Turkey Hunting 101, we'll call it. Maybe we'll do a whole nother video on different types of calls and how to use this stuff, but hopefully you gathered something from this. If you did, please, by all means, let me know in the comments below. If you want to see me go into more detail about one of these topics, also leave that in the comments below. But other than that, guys, as always, be smart, be safe, and until next time.